Welcome to the Spiritual Uprising podcast, the podcast meant to empower women to embrace their spirituality while inspiring them to rise up and out of the life that they were told to live and step into the life that they were meant to live. My name is Amanda Campbell, holistic health practitioner and spiritual coach over at theintuitivewife.com. I wanted to create this episode today to talk a little bit about healing, and this is more of my own little story, something that prompted this healing journey that I literally started today. But I thought it would be important to share. So I was triggered by something about 2 weeks ago or so at this point. It completely came out of nowhere. I felt blindsided and I was actually shocked at my response, which was full on ugly cry. Hyperventilating, feeling dizzy, like I felt like the life force had been sucked out of me. And surprisingly, I called a friend, which is something I don't usually do. I'm a very private person. I like to deal with my own shit just on my own for the most part. I usually don't really bring other people into my drama, into my circle. So it felt very important to me at that time to call someone that I knew would know what I was going through. So I called a friend to help me stop hyperventilating, first of all, and to ground myself, and to just kind of be a sounding board. And this, I don't know if I want to say this entire time, but for a long time, I thought that this was something that I had, gotten over. But these past few days have taught me that you don't really get over things. You heal from them, you acknowledge them, and you release them, and you move on so they no longer weigh you down. But that's very different, in my opinion, on an energetic standpoint, than to say you get over something. Get over to me implies that it no longer bothers you. You don't really think about it, or especially when you're annoyed at something, you're just like, no, it's fine, whatever, I'm over it. We all know you're not over it when you say that. Let's be real. So I've never really been good at acknowledging or really even releasing things. I grew up in a way of where you shove everything under the rug. It was very rarely that things were acknowledged. And even as an adult, if I acknowledge something, and really like not coming from a place of anger or hurt, and I really just want there to be a conversation so I can understand the perspective of the other person, if I'm acknowledging that with like a family member, then they are automatically defensive and they ask me, like, why are you causing this drama? Why are you trying to stir the pot? And it's really not my intention at all. I'm really just trying to have a normal adult conversation. So both as a child and as an adult, I've had a very difficult time acknowledging things, releasing things, confronting things. So when this happened, I had to face the fact that I was not over it, and that really all I had been doing was just shoving things down, hoping for it to never return, which, if you know anything about energy in general, it will always come back to bite you in the ass. You face it, you deal with it, you release it, and you'll be fine. But if you don't, it will find a way to come back over and over and over. So when this came up, I knew that I couldn't run from it anymore. It's not normal to hyperventilate and break down into tears at the slightest mention of this subject. So I have to admit that I was scared. I'm still scared. Even after knowing that I have to work through this and that hiding from it is no longer going to work. I know that it's going to be messy. And I have to brace myself for the fact that yes, it's going to be messy. I'm going to cry. I might hyperventilate. I'm going to be cranky on some days because it was just emotionally draining to have to focus or relive those events all over again just to release them now. And that I'm sure this is going to take even longer than I wanted to or that I expected to. But that's the thing with energy is expectations aren't a thing. You will always be disappointed if you place an expectation. So it's scary to start, and I am struggling to get out of the mindset of this is going to be long and painful, and shifting my mindset into I will finally be released from this and it will no longer weigh me down. It's scary to not know how long it's going to take or exactly how it's going to affect you. I mean, based on experience, I have an idea, and based on that idea, I obviously don't want to have to relive that shit over and over. But, such is life. This is how we grow as people, as human beings. This is how I grow as a healer and as a coach myself. So, especially in the position that I'm in, I can, but I can't tell someone this is what you need to do in order to heal or in order to release or in order to feel better if I'm not willing to step up and do the shit myself too. This isn't a do as I say, not as I do situation. Like, I'm not a coach to bark orders. I'm a coach to guide and support. And I want my clients to know that I've done the shit too. So in order to be able to evolve and step into my next level, this is going to suck, but this is absolutely required. I guess this is just one of those things that you have to jump in with both feet and hope for the best, and hope that I've done enough of my inner work to know when my ego is talking, or to know that today I just need to be extra gentle with myself, or that today it's okay to be vulnerable, or whatever. And the funny thing about healing journeys, and this actually is one of the reasons why I didn't want to create this episode today, that's because our healing journeys aren't cut and dry. I feel like I absolutely have to document this whole journey for myself. And I feel like it needs to be shared. And I can't explain why, and I don't know why. But one of the reasons I didn't want to, or one of the reasons I'm resisting, is because healing isn't cut and dry. And I don't want to say that there is, or give you the impression that there is a step-by-step process that you can follow. Because at least in my experience so far, there isn't. But my hope is that by sharing my experience and the steps that I followed, you'll be inspired to work on your own healing, even while knowing that it's going to be hard and painful and it's going to suck. But hopefully it also gives you a little bit of comfort in knowing that you're not alone and that you absolutely are capable of doing this. And of course, I'm here to support you in any way that I can. So I felt like this is something that needs to be released, discussed, talked about. I don't know, pick a word, but I can't hold it in anymore. So I guess this podcast for the next few episodes will be at least touching in on a little bit on my healing journey and how I'm doing with it, or what steps I'm taking. And I've recently been listening to, being cooped up at home in isolation, you kind of run out of things to do. But I've been listening to a lot of audiobooks, and one of the book that I'm listening to right now is called Energy Anatomy by Caroline Mace. And it's actually really helped me to shift my perspective when it comes to chakras, to healing, and really just life in general in a weird way. She went on to talk about the Catholic sacraments, which honestly, I normally tune out anything related to religion, but this caught my attention. I found it interesting. She reviewed both the literal and the symbolic meanings of each sacrament, including, and hopefully I don't say this wrong, extramunction. um, and where I was taught in school is essentially death. It's basically like the sacrament of dying and being buried and returning to God. But she described it in a really interesting way. Yes, there was the literal way of, how we're taught in school of it being a sacrament of death. But she described it as releasing your dead, as in releasing your dead weight, releasing your hurt, your trauma, the things that keep you in fear and anger and get in the way of you living in the present moment. And she's even said at least 3 times so far in this book, don't carry your dead, let it go. And I mean, I'd heard it a few times, but when I was getting ready to record the podcast, I was listening to the audiobook in the background while I was, getting all my shit together. And she said it again. Don't carry your dead, let it go. And it struck a chord, like in a good way. It struck a chord, and it's like, it was almost like a confirmation that this is what I'm supposed to be doing. You know how when you're doing something or you're thinking about doing something and just out of the blue something happens to validate, or like I had been tuning out a little bit of the chapter, kind of like tuning in and out because I'm doing shit, putting laundry in, unloading the dishwasher. Like you can only hear so much when you're doing that. So shame on me for not focusing completely on the book. But what's interesting is that when I tuned back in was the exact moment when she said, release the dead weight. Like, don't carry your dead, let it go. And I don't know, I can't explain it, and maybe I'm just sounding like a crazy person, but it felt like the exact thing that I needed to hear in that moment as like a confirmation that this needs to be done, and it needs to be done now. And after I finished taking notes on what I wanted to talk about in today's episode, I went back to listen to the audiobook and picking up where I left off, and this is what she said within seconds of me pressing play. Seek only the truth. Have the courage to recognize with yourself when you are not wanting to look at yourself, when you are not wanting to look clearly at yourself. Have the courage to say the prayer, look, I may not want to see my shadow, but bring it out anyway. Have the courage to say the prayer, look, I may not want to know what's going on here, but let me know what's going on here. And I felt like that just completely sums up our healing journeys, or at least the first few steps of our healing journeys, or just mine, maybe, where I'd gotten so comfortable with sweeping things under the rug. And then when it was time to actually release it, I was kind of, it's like, that you need to do it, but you really don't want to do it. And you acknowledge that you're afraid to do it. And then all of a sudden, you're being told, have the courage, even though you know that you need to do it, you're still afraid to do it. And it kind of made me feel a little bit better to know that I'm not the only one that's scared when it comes to healing, when it comes to releasing, when it comes to evolving and moving on. Because it's very easy to get stuck in our own heads and judge ourselves and feel like we're the only ones going through this exact thing in this moment. And we're not. There's how many people on this planet? Like, we're obviously not alone. And we're obviously not the only person on the entire planet in this moment with shit that we have shoved down that needs to be released. So I wanted to share that with you, not only because of, the interesting timing that this all came up, but because I hope it gives you, inspiration or support or courage that you need to acknowledge your feelings and heal your wounds. And I've decided, which I think I already said, that I'm going to document my process as a way to try and support you on your journey. So if you have any questions like how to get started or need some support, please reach out to me. You can send me, if you're listening to this on Anchor, you can send me one of those voice memos, or you can send me an email at hello@theintuitivewife.com. I'm also available on Instagram at theintuitivewife if you prefer to DM me. I don't want you to feel like you're the only person going through your own shit. And I definitely don't want you to sit in your shit all by yourself. That's definitely not a fun experience. And I have a few ideas on topics for upcoming episodes, but if you don't want to wait that long, head on over to YouTube and search The Intuitive Wife. I have videos on chakras and energy healing and journaling, which you may find helpful in, getting started, at least until my next episodes are posted. And I'm thinking about talking about the shadow self and inner child healing, maybe prompts or different ways to journal your pain or healing. I haven't quite figured it all out. I have a few ideas, but if you have any suggestions, of course, feel free to send them my way. I would love to try and talk about them or dig into them or dive into them as much as I possibly can. So in closing, I don't think I've ever said that before. In closing, it sounds so adult. I guess I'll close off this episode with another reminder of what Caroline Myss said, which was live in the present moment. Don't carry your dead. Let it go. Until my next episode, I'll talk to you guys later. Bye, guys.